Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views with myself, Salai Lomakudir, and we're going to be shifting focus now, I think, to a very, very important story, one that doesn't, need the world's attention and eyes to move away from the story of Gaza and how it has turned to be one of the most dangerous places for journalists, for emergency workers. It has become literally the epicenter of a genocide against the Palestinian people. Last night, Palestinian journalist Helmi Al-Fakawi was burnt alive in an Israeli airstrike that targeted a tent housing that targeted tent housing reporters in Khan Yunis near the already bombarded Al Nasir hospital. Videos, I think very, very gruesome videos that we've all seen, showed his body engulfed in flames as his colleagues desperately tried to save him, and they ultimately failed. 9 other journalists were wounded in the same targeted strike, including Ahmed Mansour, who remains in critical condition. Al-Faghawi's death brings the number of journalists murdered since October 2023 to at least 210. This genocide has made Gaza the deadliest place in recorded history for journalists, and also, for people that are aid workers, for doctors, for paramedics. And I think we can all agree, just looking at the stats, that this has become more deadly than any other wars that we've seen, both world wars, the Vietnam War, the Iraq War, and also the Afghanistan War. And what's worse with this one is it is live streamed. We are seeing all of this happen in real time. And I think we can all agree at this point that these are not accidental deaths, as they are the result of deliberate targeting of those who are trying to assist, those that are in very, very difficult circumstances, and the journalists who are also trying to document the truth and trying to expose the horror of Gaza to the world. And under international law, this is not just a violation. It constitutes a war crime, a crime against humanity, and further evidence of the ongoing genocide. And as I mentioned, it's not just journalists. There's been more than 300 humanitarian workers that have been killed globally in the past year, many in Gaza, paramedics, doctors, UN staff, and also rescue volunteers who are being shot and bombed and ultimately buried alive under the rubble. And today on News and Views, we're going to be speaking to Dr. Mimi Syed, an American emergency physician who I think witnessed this genocide firsthand while serving in Gaza's hospitals, including Al Nasir and Al Aqsa Hospital, where she treated wounded civilians under fire. She saw colleagues murdered, and she left Gaza with stories that need to be told by the world. I think it's no longer a question of morality. I think we must start asking the question about accountability, and it starts with the truth being told, particularly by those that have witnessed what's happening in Gaza firsthand. And Dr. Mimi Syed is joining us via our virtual platform. Doc, thank you so much for joining us. It's really a pleasure having you on our platform, and really looking forward to an eye-opening conversation with you.
Hi, thanks for having me. Yes, I served 2 medical missions in Gaza, once in August last year for a month, and then again in December, also for a month. So I returned in January, and the scene is horrific, just like you described. The things that we witnessed firsthand are crimes, absolute crimes. There's no question about it. There is absolute premeditation and intentionality in all of this that's happening.
Mm.
Over 70% of the patients that we saw were children and women. We saw deliberate targeting of children. We saw gunshot wounds in children. That's no longer a secret. It's every colleague of mine that's been there has witnessed that. And the majority of the patients that come in with injuries are children. Unfortunately, over 50% of the population of Gaza are children. And currently what we're seeing is, mass starvation, mass killings of children. Every single day we're witnessing a live stream, like you said, decapitated babies, children with limbs missing, innocent civilians killed regularly, sleeping and then buried under rubble. Next thing you know, we're buried under rubble. We keep in touch with all of our colleagues still, and the people that we met there, and we have very strong relationships with them. And the messages that I have been getting in the last week have been horrific. They're different. It is,
Mm,
now it is begging us to help them. I received a message yesterday, Dr. Mimi, does anybody have any sanity there? We're starving. We're going to die. We have no place to go. This is unreal. I can't even put into words how horrific and how devastating it feels.
mm, And I can only imagine how you are feeling right now, receiving those messages and almost, being helpless and not being, able to be there on the ground and assist in whatever way that you can. The world was shaken again by, the recent reports of those Red Crescent paramedics being killed and buried in a mass grave. I think it was sometime last week. How do aid workers on the ground kind of process that level of violence, especially when they are so clearly marked as neutral parties, but it looks like those markings have made them targets?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a known fact that the Israeli government, the Israeli military targets healthcare workers. It's not a crossfire, it's not an accident. To mention about these 15 paramedics were shot over and over again in the chest, in the head. They were executed. There was no question as to what their role was. They were on duty. They were dressed in their uniforms. There were lights flashing. All of this is on video. They were buried in a mass grave. Not only that, but they were buried with their ambulance. So the Israeli military had the forethought to create this mass grave big enough to bury them with the ambulance. There is absolutely no question about intentionality or knowledge of what these people were. They were healthcare workers, they were paramedics, they were first responders, and the Israeli military knew that. The IDF
Mm,
is very good at fabricating events, and the Western media is complicit in perpetuating that. We have seen that over and over again. And in the New York Times, it was reported, well, this was mistaken. No, this is not mistaken. This was on purpose. This was a deliberate target. And we need to be calling this what it is. The Israeli military continues to create this narrative that this is happening on accident, or this was, friendly fire or
mm,
unintentional. Absolutely not. They bombed a hospital. They bombed Nasser Hospital just a few weeks ago, where there are vulnerable patients. There are foreign aid workers. They knew very well there are, colleagues of ours that were there in the hospital. So all of this, this nonsense of, oh, we didn't know, this is not true. The Israeli government spends millions of dollars on propaganda to justify to the world that it is okay to kill innocent civilians and to target healthcare workers and to commit these disgusting war crimes. And if you need millions of dollars for propaganda to justify these violent acts, there's something wrong with your purpose. And the
mm,
world needs to wake up to this and ask themselves, why is this? Why do they need to spend millions of dollars to convince the world that the acts that they are committing are justified?
mm.
And it's been happening. We've been seeing this happen. It's been happening long before October 7th, but the world is now just waking up to see the reality of what the Israeli government is.
And speaking of reality, I want us just to play that clip quickly, so that, for those that might not have seen it, just to get a bit of context. And then we can come back with you, maybe as someone that has been in that position, that has been in the front lines, just psychologically, how much does it take, to be able to still be a doctor, still deliver the much needed emergency aid, but literally not lose your mind, to remain sane, when there's such horror happening in front of your eyes.
يا رب يكونوا بخير يا رب يكونوا بخير. هي مرمي 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 بسرعة بسرعة. هذا الشيء أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد.
I mean, it's almost disturbing, to your psyche, and just how you go about processing the whole thing. But as someone that has been so close to it, I think you can maybe just give us a better understanding of what goes through your mind and your thought process in that moment, where it feels like a horror movie unfolding in front of you, literally.
Yeah, I mean, when I first saw that video, I couldn't speak. I was a mess, and it's still very emotional just watching that. There are no words to describe the horror that's in that video, the last words. But also, I know that the work ethics of the healthcare workers in Gaza is it's immeasurable. It is. They embody what it means to be a servant for humanity, and they are so loyal to their profession. And you can hear it. You can hear it in his voice in the very last moments of his life. And apologizing to his mother, but for serving in this field, and that's what he's doing to his very last breath. He is serving. And they embody that, they embody those ethics of a healthcare worker. And it is absolutely terrifying to be a healthcare worker in Gaza. As foreign aid workers, we have a sense of protection, but it's nothing. The fear that we feel when we are there in Gaza as foreign aid workers is nothing compared to the fear and the devastation that the healthcare workers of Gaza feel. They have been going through this for 17 months. And we go there, we have the luxury of going there for 4 weeks, and we come back to our regular life. But they have to stay there. And whatever we feel is nothing. It's nothing compared to what they are feeling. And people ask me this a lot, is how were you able to do your job? How did you not break down? And it is by the strength of the people in Gaza, is of the Palestinians. They are incredibly strong. And the patience and the kindness that they display I've never seen. It's incomparable to anything I've ever witnessed. So the drive to keep going that's where I get it from. I get it from the people of Palestine.
And I think, as you mentioned there, you served during, I think, very, very critical periods of this genocide, both in August and also in December. Did you personally or hear about incidents where medical teams or journalists were targeted, and maybe you had to be in their aid, even though they were adhering to international norms and standards of being visible, having press vests, or the marking and all of the clothes literally that show that we are here as aid workers, we're here as journalists? Have you witnessed that personally, them being brought to you and having to deal with it? What was that like?
So in Gaza, there have been more journalists killed than any other conflict or war in the past, all combined. And when I was there in December, I had a friend, Ayman Agedi, and he was a journalist. He came and he saw me one day. It was a Friday, I remember, and he said, "I'll come see you tomorrow. My wife is actually in labor, so I'm going to the hospital, to be with her." And he had messaged me that night, and I had congratulated him and said, "This is so amazing. This was his first child that he was welcoming." He was in a press car that was clearly marked, said press, waiting outside of the hospital that night. And he was struck by the Israeli military. The entire car was in flames. He was killed along with 4 other journalists that day. It's so common to have a journalist get killed and targeted in Gaza that there is nothing that compares to that in any other conflict zone combined. Like I said, the numbers are incomparable. And this continues to happen. I have friends there that have lost their significant others that were journalists. And since then, since I've been back, Ayman's father was killed, and he was also a journalist. So these are, people that are clearly marked in press vests. They are in press cars. They are clearly they should be protected class under humanitarian law, and they are targeted. And the only time you target journalists is when you don't want the truth out, when you don't allow foreign journalists in. And another reason, why aren't foreign journalists allowed in? It's to suppress the truth, because what is there and what needs to be shown is horrific, and the Israeli government knows it, and so they block foreign journalists from entering.
Mm. And when you are on the ground, and you are in the midst of all of this, and it's happening so close to you, and you are witnessing it firsthand, what does it do to your morale? To your sense of safety, your sense of duty, knowing that international law is not being respected at all, and that there might be no consequences for these killings ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, we have seen this happen over the last 17 months. The Israeli government has complete impunity. They have no accountability for anything that they do. And the world has shown us that there is no red line for Gaza, right? They can kill children. They can do mass starvation. They have blocked aid from entering into Gaza for over a month already. And now the shellings have begun again. So, the world has shown us that Israeli government has complete impunity. They have absolutely no accountability for any act that they commit. And at this point, the US government is just as guilty, because they continue to aid this. They continue to support this despite knowing. And, I used to think, people just don't know. People just don't know what's happening in Gaza. And so that's why they continue to support it. That isn't true anymore. It is televised. It is live. The whole world is seeing what is happening in Gaza. And the US government continues to aid it. They continue to support it and allow the Israeli government to do whatever it pleases without any accountability or justice. And at this point, and I hate to say this, I have lost faith in humanity. I have no faith, no hope in humanity anymore. The only hope that I have is that justice will be served for the crimes that have been committed by both of these governments.
I've always struggled with this. Almost mystifying and making the people of Gaza almost be these superhero figures, that we almost forget about the fact that they are just like all of us. They are human beings who feel pain, who feel hurt, who have, I think, an unthinkable amount of trauma. Doesn't that maybe, and this is just an opinion that I have, that maybe it takes away from the world acting, because of their steadfastness, and because of the resilience that they've showed, they've almost taken away their humanness, if I can put it that way. And that's why it's so hard for the world to kind of relate, and be a bit more angrier to what's currently happening to them. But don't you maybe just share the same sentiment? I think, we always reiterate, I mean, they're so steadfast. They're so, they're like these superhero-like figures. And isn't it important sometimes just to take a moment to remember that these are human beings, just like all of us?
Absolutely. I mean, that is a very important point, right? This whole word of resilience is overused, and we have to remember that these are human beings. The fact that they are kind and that they are patient should not be used as a reason or a justification for what they are going through. These are human beings with the same pain and suffering. They have love for life. They want to live just like we all do, and they have that right. They love their children just like we all love our children. They want safety for themselves and for their family members. And this is, I don't understand this this mentality that you're explaining. And you're right, I have seen it. The fact that they are superhuman, they should continue to endure this. That's ridiculous. That's ludicrous. That sounds insane. In what world do we live in where that's okay for human beings to continue to suffer this way for unnecessary reasons, for completely preventable things?
And just in closing, Doc, I think we've reached a point in this genocide where people like yourself, people that are in solidarity with the people of Palestine all across the world, there's this almost sense of helplessness, saying, especially after October the 7th last year, we saw so many protests, from across the world. We saw people on social media being very, very active, trying to hold their governments to account, taking to the streets. But this year, it almost feels like people are like, we don't know what to do or what to say anymore. And as someone that has been in Gaza and that has witnessed all of this firsthand, what do you say to the world that feels helpless and feels like they have nothing to offer the people of Gaza anymore, because whatever steps and actions they've taken thus far has ultimately not yielded any kind of reward?
I think it's absolutely important to continue to keep going. And it's really important to be stronger in your voice. We cannot stop. It is just not a choice that we have. If the people of Gaza need to endure this and continue to endure this and suffer, we must suffer with them. That is true solidarity. And, and I hear it from the people on the ground, from people of Gaza, thank you for standing with us. When I was there in Gaza, I would have people come up to me over and over again and thank me. Thank you for leaving your family and your safety of your country and being here with us. And I understand the frustration that we speak and we yell and do everything we can, but it just continues to happen. But even though it's hard to see, there have been changes. There has been small movement, and I think that that's the reason why we need to continue to talk about it. And it's just not an option to not talk about it. We have to continue, and together, collectively, our voices are stronger. And that is the message that I want to say to people is, the more voices we have, the more collective infuriated that we are, the stronger we are. And that's why we must keep going. It is just not an option to stop.
And I think we're going to leave on that note, Doctor. Thank you so much for joining us, and for that really eye-opening and insightful conversation. I think it always helps, speaking to people that have witnessed all of this firsthand, because just the sheer scale and devastation of it feels unreal. You don't imagine human beings actually being there and trying to survive and live in the midst of all of this horrendous acts. But I think it's people like you who can go in and come out and give perspective on just how horrible it is. So really, really appreciate you giving us your time and for giving us those insights.
Thank you so much for having me.
There you go. That was Dr. Mimi Syed. And I think, very, very important and eye-opening conversation that needs to be heard. And I think it's up to the rest of the world to act in whatever way that we can, to continue going out to the streets, to continue protesting, to continue holding our governments accountable. If we feel they're not acting and not doing enough, to make sure that, these killers, essentially this Israeli genocidal machine, is ultimately held responsible and made to account for their crimes against humanity. So really interesting conversation. And if you missed it, you can head over to our social media platforms, and you can listen and comment and share with the rest of the world. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be with you after this.